In this tutorial, we're going to take a look at taking pieces of clip art available within the software and look at assembling them in a step-by-step process. We're first going to take a look at the layout, and then we're going to make some adjustments to the heights of the components, and then we're going to apply some finishing techniques before ultimately we're going to be placing the model within a dish. So I'm just going to go ahead and file close, and then we're going to start a brand new file. So let's click create a new file, and it's going to be a single-sided job, and we're going to start with a width of 8 inches and a height of 8 inches, and we're going to specify a thickness of half an inch, and then we're going to specify the Z0 position to be off the material surface, and we're going to have the XY datum position in the center. Now for this, we're going to make sure that we have the modeling resolution set to high, and then once we've done that, we can simply press OK. Now when it comes to assembling clip art, we can literally start loading pieces from the clip art tab directly into the software and start arranging them into something that we might like. Or if we have a pre-planned design or even a sketch that we've sketched onto a piece of paper, and that's what I've done, we can import that into the software. And we can do this simply by coming up to this icon here, which is going to allow us to import a bitmap for tracing. So I'm just going to click this, and you'll find that in your tutorials folder under the Golf Award _ files folder, then we have the Golf Award sketch. Now this is something that I just drawn on the nearest piece of paper that I could find and just scanned it into the software. So I'm just going to select that and then click open, like so, and that'll then place the sketch directly in the center of the software. Now it has came in a little small, so what I may want to do while it is still selected is that I may want to come to the transform object size and actually set the selected object size to something a bit larger. So what I'm going to do is I'm just simply going to change the width to 6 inches and then click apply and then close, and that's going to be the sketch that we're going to work with when we're creating this assembly. Now there are various ways that we can import clip art into the software, or various different models like STLs for instance, and if we go to the modeling tab, the one way that we can do this is we can simply select this option here to import a component or 3D model. And that will then allow us to browse the PC and find and import various different 3D component file formats, like any of the ones that are listed in this drop down here. Now what we're going to do is we're first of all just going to select the simple laurel wreath, and we're going to simply click that and then click open, and that's then going to import that model directly in the center of our work area, like so. Another way to import clip art into the software is using the clip art tab itself. So if you just click on this tab here, you'll see that once we've got the clip art installed, you'll see that we now have a folder called clip art, and within that we have all the subfolders which will be listed automatically by the software with all the different groups and categories that we have of different pieces of clip art. Now this is not the only way, we can also add our own folders, so we could go to add and browse the Windows file system to add our own folders of clip art, and that will also bring in the subdirectories if there are any. And also we can also browse our local files. This is just a temporary basis, so we won't be adding any folders in this section for later use, just simply using it for one time only. So you may want to navigate into our file system and just select one of these pieces of clip art to load into the system. So I may want to double click that there, and that's then going to put the golf tee into the center of our work area, like so. Or we could simply navigate our library browser. So I may just want to go to the ribbons and the banners section, like so, and want to choose one of these banners that best represents our shape. So I may just want to choose ribbon 4, and we can simply drag that into the work area and let go wherever we want to place that, like so. So now that we've got all of our clip art into our work area, now might be a good time to start organizing the sizes and the positions of our clip art. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the modeling tab, like so, and I'm just going to switch off the visibility of the ribbon and the golf ball and tee components, so I can just edit and alterate the position and size of our wreath. So what I'm going to do with the wreath selected, like so, I'm just going to go into the drawing and I'm just going to resize the object. So I'm just going to downsize this a little bit, just to 5.5. So I'm just going to type 5.5 in there. With the link XY enabled, it's going to automatically scale the height for me, and I'm just going to click apply like so, and I'm just going to close that. And then I'm just going to go back to the modeling tab, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn the visibility back on of the golf tee like so. Now it's obvious that this one needs resizing, so I'm just going to make that the selected component, go back into the drawing tab and resize this one again, and I'm just going to resize this to, let's say, 5 inches, apply. I think I need to go a little bit smaller, so I'm just going to type 4 and see what that looks like. Yes, I think that's around about the size that I'm after. Now I'm just going to put the view into the vertical view so I can see the 3D and the 2D view at the same time. This will help me get a better look at what it looks like in the 3D view as well. So what I'm going to do with the golf ball and tee is I'm actually going to align this to the very bottom of the wreath. Now there is an easy way to do this. Just select the golf ball and tee so it's in transform mode, and you can see that by all the nodes appearing in the 3D view. And then with the mouse cursor with the 4 arrows, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the mouse button down, hold Alt on the keyboard, and that will just allow me to drag this down vertically. And what I want to do is just get the point so it matches the very point of that bottom of the wreath there, like so. And then when I'm done that, I can just press F on the keyboard to zoom to fit, like so. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead in the modeling tab and I'll turn back on the ribbon, like so. And with that, I'm just going to again select it like so. Now, because of the way that we imported the ribbon into the software, it's not actually in the dead center of the software. So I'm going to need to center that after I've resized this. So I'm just going to resize this the simple way by just using the transform shortcut. So I just want to change the width of this to 5. So I'm just going to simply type in 5, 0 to auto scale the height and press enter, and that's going to change that for me. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to center that in the center of our material like so. And then what I'm going to do is just going to close that, put it back into transform mode, and from the center I'm just going to hold Alt again, just drag that down in line vertically to around about here, like so. Now there is something that we do need to think about here, as if we just zoom in a little on the 3D view, you'll see that there's a very, very small gap in between the ribbon and the wreath. Now that may cause problems when machining, and we may not be able to clear that gap dependent on the size of the tool that we're going to use. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just resize the ribbon itself. So I'm just going to grab on this center bottom node here, and that'll just allow me to drag that downwards. So I want it to roughly come to around about here. Just zoom in a little bit. And I'm just going to drag a little bit more, like so, and then again I'm just going to hold Alt on the keyboard and just try and center that in the center of our wreath, like so. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to press this icon here so I can get the full view back in the 3D view, like so, and that looks about right. That's perfect. So that completes the positioning of our 3D components, but now we need to start thinking about the order of appearance of our 3D components, as at the moment, as you can see, they are intersecting one another. And for this we can use solely the 3D view. So I'm just going to enlarge the 3D view, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a closer look at the components themselves. Now the order that I wish the components to appear is I want the golf ball and tee to appear at the back of the composite model. Then I want the wreath to be in the middle ground, and then I want the ribbon to appear in the foreground. Now I just did move that, I'll just press Ctrl Z to undo that movement, just in case you happen to do anything like that as well. So I'm just going to click that back in the Z axis. Now I'm going to start with the wreath, so I'm just going to double click on the wreath like so, and I'm going to work solely in the 3D view here. So I'm just going to click again to get the transform nodes available, and you'll see this bottom dark node here. If we click that, we get a short version of the component properties form, and we can actually move this anywhere we like within the window. We don't actually need to keep it within inside the software either. So if we wanted to take it outside, we can. Now we can see at the moment that the wreath is at a height of 0.28 of an inch. So I don't really want to add any more height to the wreath, and I don't really want to reduce the height of the wreath. As you can see, we've got some really good detail here on the wreath. But what we do need to consider is the fact that this ribbon does need to stand proud on top of the wreath. And I don't really want to add too much height to the ribbon either. So the way we can actually conquer this problem is by actually applying a fade to the component. Now what this does, we set an anchor point from one position, which will then act as like the hinge, and then we put another anchor point in another position, and in between those 2 points that we specify, we will gradually fade down the height of that component to a percentage that we're going to specify. So let's check the option to fade, and then check the button to set the anchor points, like so. So we're going to fade from the top, so this is where it's going to hinge from, and we're going to click down at the bottom where we're going to specify where it's going to fade down at its most. And as you can see here, it's faded down quite a lot, so we've already achieved what we want, but we can actually try and get away with fading it down less. So let's just scroll down, and this will automatically readjust the 3D view for us. So I don't want to lose too much detail, so I just want to go down to maybe, let's try 40%, like so. So maybe something around this area here, like so. And then what we can do is we can then double click the golf ball and tee and then adjust the position of that. So if we just select that, like so, and just zoom in a little here. Now you can see at the moment this is standing sort of in the same region as the wreath. So what we want to do is we also want to reduce the height down the bottom here to make it appear in the background. So we can apply the same method again that we just did to the wreath. So if I just click that back in the Z-axis there, just zoom in a tiny bit, I'm again going to use the fade option. So I'm just going to click the set button again. So I'm just going to do the same from the top through the bottom, like so, and you'll see that straight away that has now put that behind the wreath for us. So that's automatically achieved exactly what we're after. And now we can move on to our last component, which is the ribbon. So I'm just going to double click that one there, like so. Now I could, if I wanted to, adjust the shape height to just push that above the wreath that's coming through here, or I can simply add a base height to the component itself. So if I just go ahead and specify a value here, so I'm just going to go for 0.1, just press spacebar, and you'll see that has pushed it up a little bit, but I can just see 2 speckles of the wreath still coming through there. So I may just want to clear that just a little bit more, so I might just go for 0.2, like so. And let's push that up enough now where we can't see any of the wreath coming through either. So that now gives us the visual appearance that the wreath is sitting behind the ribbon and the golf ball tee sitting behind the wreath. So the next thing that I'm going to think about is actually applying some text ready to machine later on along the ribbon. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close the components form there, like so. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Draw Text tool. And as I'm going to be working with text, I'm going to go back into the 2D view. So I'm just going to go into here, I'm going to click F on the keyboard to zoom to fit. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to type out some text. So in capitals, I'm just going to type hole in 1, like so. And I'm going to use a true type font, and you can use any from your system default fonts, but I'm going to use one called Georgia, like so. And you can just type that freely in and that will come up with the nearest font that you've got in your system. So I'm just going to select that, like so. And I'm going to give this a text height of 0.4 of an inch, and I'm just going to click apply and close, like so. Now my aim here is actually to have this text follow this curve of the banner. So what we're going to do for this is we're actually going to go ahead and create ourselves that curve manually. So I'm just going to deselect the text there, and I'm going to go into the Draw Polyline tool, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to zoom in a little towards the bottom of the ribbon. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click just at the point here, and I'm going to hit the center of that ribbon here, and you can see that I've got the suggested center of the material there with the vertical line that's heading up. It's going to click around there, and I'm going to click around at the point there, and you'll see that that's now does have a matching horizontal line with the first point that I created, like so. So once that's created, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into node editing mode, as I want to now make this a curve. So I'm going to go to the node edit option here underneath the edit options, and I'm just going to go over this node here. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to turn that node into a smooth point, like so. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to align this node and its control handle in the y-axis. I can do that very simply by clicking on the original node and pressing the letter Y on the keyboard. And I'm going to do the same again for this one. Press Y, and I can do that for this as well by clicking the center there and pressing Y, like so. And now you'll see that we have a nice flowing curve that matches very similar to the ribbon that we've created. Now feel free, if you need to, make some further edits. I may just want to actually just move that node out a bit so it matches the point on the corner there, and I can actually just manually drag that in the horizontal as well, using that vertical line as a guide for me. That's gone a little bit too much. I'm just going to bring that back like so. And once we've done that, we can simply use the normal selection arrow. We can zoom to fit like so, and what we're going to do is we're first of all going to select the text like so, and then we're going to hold shift down, and we're going to select that vector that we just created like so, and then we're going to go to this option here underneath the create vectors section called text on a curve, which is where we can wrap text along a curve. Click that, and then we will be presented with a various number of options to do with applying text along a curve. So the first few options, I want to maintain the text size as it is at the moment, and I don't want to mess around with the text spacing. And the text position, I want it to be above the curve, like so, and I want it to be aligned in the center of the line, which is good. I just want to add a slight offset distance of 0.1, so 1/10 of an inch, and I want it to align to the curve. I'm just going to click apply like so. Now if you happen to get anything like this that happens, that will be because this option here, text on the other side, has been checked. So just uncheck that, and you'll see that automatically that has now been put in place correctly, like so. Simply click apply and close. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to simply click in the white space to deselect both of those, and then I'm just going to select the curve that we created, and I'm just going to hit delete on the keyboard as we no longer need that vector. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tile the windows vertically so I can see the 2D view and the 3D view at the same time. And I'm just going to give this one last look over before we go ahead and apply it into our dish. Now this may just be a subjective thing, but I do notice that the edges along the wreath itself and the golf ball are a lot softer than those sharp edges and corners of the banner itself. Now if we ever do come across anything like this and want to make a real quick edit on how we can soften the edges of a component, what we can do is we can simply double click to select the component that we want to smooth and come to the modeling tab, and you'll go to this option here, which is to apply a smoothing filter to the component. So what we do is we just simply select that, and you'll see that automatically it applies 50% smoothing. You'll notice that that has made the corners already a lot smoother than what they were. So just to compare as to what they were, in case you've missed that, so let's just bring that all the way down to minimum, like so, and you'll see the difference between those two now. Now what I'm looking for is around about 25%, 20% smoothing. So if I just click here, you see that that's added just enough smoothing now where I feel that that now complements the wreath and the golf ball. So it actually feels like it actually belongs within that composite model. So once we're happy with the smoothing that we've applied, all we do is simply click OK, and that will then exit that smoothing form for us. Now though, we can start to think about placing our award into a dish. Now when working with parts that are dished or recessed below the modelling plane, it's very important that we have a component that represents the plane, and for two reasons. One, it helps us to see visually the part, and two, it helps prevent some possible issues that we might encounter when it comes to machining, which we will look at when we come to set up the toolpaths. So to add in a modelling plane, all we do is simply click this icon here to add in a modelling plane, and you'll notice that that has created us a component named Zero Plane. And also, if we check the Layers tab, you'll also notice that it has also created its own layer called Zero Plane, and you'll notice that the visibility is checked off. Now the reason for that is that if we check the visibility on, you'll notice that it's gone grey, matching the outside of our working area. Now if this component was placed on any other layer, it would obscure all of the components that we'd have in the 2D view. So that's why we automatically put it on its own layer at the very top of the layer list, and we also check off the visibility. Now we've done that though, we can go ahead and add our dish. So I'm just going to go over to the Clip Art tab, like so, and I'm going to go to this section here under the library folders, Domes and Dishes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to import the flat round circle. So I'm just going to double click, and that's going to place that directly in the center of our work area. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to press the Z icon there just to put the 3D view back in the Z axis. And as you can see at the moment, the dish has come in positive. So what we need to do is we need to change the combine mode to negative. So if we just click the large blue node at the bottom there, and that will bring up the shortened component properties form for us. And all we need to do is change the combine mode of this component to negative. So just simply select the negative icon here and then close, and you'll notice that that has then turned that shape into a dish for us. So all we need to do now is just resize that so it can home our award that we've created. So I'm just going to go to the Drawing tab, and I'm going to set the selected object size, and as they're both equal, you can change the width or the height as long as link XY is enabled. I'm just going to change that to 7.5 inches, click apply, like so, and close. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to center the other objects in the dish. So what I'm going to do is go to the Modeling tab, select the simple wreath to the ribbon, and what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to make sure that the text is selected. So I'm just going to hold shift down and make sure that text is selected so it moves in line with our banner, and go to the Drawing tab, go to Align Selected Objects. I'm going to align to the center of the material, as we already know that the dish is centrally aligned, and press that button like so, and that's now moved that into the center of our dish. Now when working with a recess or a dish and we're placing objects within that dish, it's always good to think about the heights of the models to make sure that they're not appearing above the dish or the zero plane, because if they were, they would create flat spots and we just wouldn't machine them. So we need to make sure that they're not actually appearing above that. So how we do that is we can either look down either axis like so, or we can come to the Modeling tab and come to the Scale Height of the model, and here it will tell us the exact height of all the components. Now if anything is appearing above the zero plane, which is at the top of our model, it will say a height above the maximum Z. And at the moment you can see that the height is 0 for the maximum Z, which means there's nothing that appears above that zero plane, which is perfect. That's exactly what we want. But when I look at the height of the overall model, I see that it's only 0.3 of an inch. So that does mean that we do have some material to play with. So if I wanted to, I could actually increase the height of the components within the dish just to make them stand out a little more and make them more prominent. So how I could do this is simply, if I just come out of this form here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the simple Laurel Wreath, and again shift and select the ribbon so it selects all three components. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click them all and select to group them, as if I group all the components together I can now edit all of the components as one. So if I just now go to the components, component properties, like so, you'll see that we now have a combined shape height of 0.2393. Any edits that I make here is going to affect all the individual components equally. So we know that the shape height overall is 0.3 of an inch, and that is basically going to be made up of that dish recess shape. So I know that I can at least go up to 0.33 of an inch without it going above the 0 plane. So let's just move this up. So I'm just going to go for 0.3 and just hit the space bar there, and that will then re-render the 3D view for us. I'm just going to take a look in the 3D view. You can see that's moved that up nicely for us. We could though, since we know that the material that we're using is 1/2 an inch thick, we could actually move up the height of not only these components that we're editing now, but we could also make the dish a little deeper as well to accommodate the larger laurel wreath award configuration that we've created. So I'm just going to change this to 0.35, like so, and that's now standing very proud from the base of that dish there. And if I just come out of the component properties there and then go to the scale Z height of model, you'll notice that now the maximum Z has now gone above 0. So that does mean that the model inside the dish is actually above the 0 plane. Now you can't really tell in the 3D view as it's very, very minor, the amount, but it's very good to know because anything that does appear above this 0 plane will actually end up with a flat spot as it won't be machined. So it's always good to know that we can actually see and verify that information there. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change the height of the flat round circle just to accommodate the golf award itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select it and then I'm going to go into the component properties like so, and all I'm going to do is just change the shape height to 0.4 of an inch, hit the space bar so that re-renders, and then close like so. And now when I go into the scale Z height of model, you'll notice that there's nothing appearing above the maximum Z, as the maximum Z value is 0. So that now completes our model. Please join us again when we go to toolpath this in the companion video. I will link that in the tutorial browser underneath the related videos section. And thank you very much for watching.